Today, we're looking at biotic and abiotic factors and how they affect ecosystems. We'll start off with abiotic factors, but before we do that, I'd like to go back and see if you remember anything about ecosystems. When we get to the part on matching keywords, I want you to pause the film and see if you can answer any of the questions, see if they just pop into your head without you knowing it. Otherwise, they may swim slowly to the surface like slow, lumbering fish you didn't know were there. Keyword matching. So see if you can match up the words on the left with the meanings on the right. If you'd like to pause the film, see if you can do that. Population. All the members of a single species living in a habitat, e.g. minnows. Minnows are tiny little fishes. Community. All the populations of different organisms living together in a habitat. Environment. All the conditions surrounding any living organism, living things, and the non-living things. Ecosystem. A community of animals, plants, and microorganisms together with a habitat where they live. And a habitat is a place where plants and animals live. For example, a pond. There are some pictures to try and explain that. That's a nice looking snake there. All the organisms and the environment in which they live form an ecosystem. Groups of the same species of animals form populations within the ecosystem. All the populations of organisms that live and interact in an ecosystem form a community. Each population lives in a particular habitat within the ecosystem. How do abiotic factors affect ecosystems? Well, each ecosystem has particular environmental conditions or abiotic factors. Animals and plants must be adapted to these if they are to survive. The first of these is water. Water is needed for all life to survive. Organisms that live in dry places have adaptations that cut down water loss. In rivers and streams, the animals and plants have to withstand fast currents. Seaweed and seashore animals have to cope with the battering of waves. The next abiotic factor is temperature. Few living organisms can grow outside the range of 0 to 40 degrees centigrade, but penguins can survive temperatures of minus 80 degrees centigrade in the Antarctic. But penguins can survive temperatures of minus 80 degrees centigrade in the Antarctic. And some bacteria have adapted to live in hot springs at over 100 degrees centigrade. Light. Light is needed for photosynthesis. Some plants are adapted to live in shade, while others thrive in full sunlight. On the seabed or in deep caves, there is no light at all. Few organisms can live without oxygen. They need it for respiration. Aquatic organisms take oxygen out of the water. Plants also take in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and give out oxygen. Animals use this oxygen for respiration and give out carbon dioxide that the plants need for photosynthesis. Well, that sounds quite straightforward. So the abiotic factors, there are 4 of them: light, temperature, air, and water. It's not that difficult to remember. But how does it apply to ecosystems? To try and explain what abiotic factors are, I've come here, Blean Woods Nature Reserve. Now, if we look on the board, what's about? They've got chiffchaff, robins, wren, bullfinch, chaffinch, jay, song thrush, lesser spotted woodpecker, green woodpecker, great spotted woodpecker, mistle thrush, blackbird, butterflies, brimstones, comma, and peacocks. So lots of things at the nature reserve. Blean is one of the largest areas of ancient woodland in England, over 11 square miles. The woods have been shaped by local people for over 1,000 years, and they are still doing it. Blayne Woods is a place I know well, and over recent weeks it's been filled with people who have stepped inside like visitors from another planet, suddenly discovering trees for the first time. The first thing you'll notice this time of year is wood ants. The floor of the woods is covered in them, and they are busy and determined and everywhere. There are also grey squirrels scurrying around and scampering up trees. Squirrels live in nests called drays, and if you look closely at this picture, you can see a squirrel's ear poking out. It makes me appreciate nature documentaries all the more, because after wandering around here for some time, these were the only animals I managed to photograph. Anyway, abiotic factors are the non-living components of an ecosystem, so I guess that doesn't really matter. They include water, light, temperature, and air. Another vital factor in this, I think, is time. That is, the seasons themselves, and the plants and the animals change as the seasons change, interacting with each other, moving imperceptibly to the rhythms of nature. Take light. The floor of the woods has very little light and few plants growing there. Along pathways through the trees there are brambles and gorse and grasses, but here on the floor of the wood, very little. But travel backwards through time, a month or so before the leaves of the trees sprouted and covered the floor of the wood with a profound shade as the temperature began to increase from the cold inactivity of winter, and the days grew longer and the nights grew shorter, and you got this. A blanket of bluebells covering the wood with blue and green in a spectacle which occurs in this country but few others. It is the combination of light and temperature and water which gives this particular plant its opportunity. Post a picture of a bluebell wood in spring on Instagram and people from other countries will be amazed by it. We've talked about light and temperature, but what about water? Blean has a stream running through it for much of the year. An ecosystem, such as a wood, does need to have water, but the wood uses the water and maintains water within itself. If there's been a lot of rain, the wood is filled with mud, and walking my dog here is a nightmare. I'm reminded of Australia at the beginning of the year, after a long period without rain. During the summer they had record temperatures, and this was then followed by forest fires which were impossible to put out, destroying homes and livelihoods. Because Blean is such an ancient woodland, you get a huge number of different species in a small area. Even if you look at a small patch like this, you can see different species competing for space. Plants grow everywhere. Look at any public space which has been shut for any length of time, and nature will take over. Plants will grow in cracks in concrete and quickly colonise places that seem impossible. Blean Woods in autumn. Cobnuts, blackberries, apples, golden leaves, chestnuts and mushrooms, like this one, fly agaric, Aminata muscaria, growing all over the northern hemisphere, associated in many countries with Christmas. The woodland ecosystem is fairly easy to understand. There are its 4 abiotic factors: air, water, temperature and light. It has all of those. It has its different populations of animals, ants, squirrels, woodpeckers. It has different habitats: the stream, when it's got water in it, a fallen tree, the floor of the wood. It's maybe more interesting to see how life adapts to extreme environments, when the abiotic factors are more challenging. Now, the series Planet Earth is available on iPlayer and Netflix, and if you watch Caves or Desert, it is truly astonishing how life can flourish under extreme conditions. If you've not seen them before, go and watch them now. If you have seen them before, go and watch them again. Otherwise, it is my intention to have a film about ecology without David Attenborough. I'd like to end with a little footage of Blean Woods I shot earlier. Don't forget the quiz, and I'll see you next time.